Now I'm excited to introduce our first keynote speaker and EIW panel onto the stage, Dr. Shannon Bard and Brad Liski, to talk about building a movement. At its core, Tru Earth is a movement to eradicate plastic from household products. In North America, laundry detergent sector alone, they have over 700 million plastic jugs end up in landfill each year, and in the oceans as well. This is just laundry. Tru Earth has founded a movement, Pound Tru Earth Movement, that is led by the true changemakers. They continue to spread the word about the changes they've made to lower their own carbon footprint. Today, we are so excited to hear from Dr. Shannon Bard, lead of our Climate Venture Studio in Entrepreneurship at UBC, in conversation with Brad Liski, co-founder and CEO of Tru Earth. They will share his philosophy about how small changes, or hinges, as Tru Earth calls them, can open big doors, providing one person influence over thousands of people in making simple, sustainable changes. We are privileged to know and work with Brad as part of Entrepreneurship UBC's mentor network, and we trust you will gain a lot from today's conversation. Shannon and Brad, please join us on stage.
Is that, oh great.
Very good, thanks so much. So for those of you that haven't met Brad and aren't familiar with Tru Earth, I thought we'd start off with Brad just sort of discussing a little bit about the origins of Tru Earth and what solution you're solving.
Yeah, so if you go right back to the origin story, Tru Earth was what I call clean giving. So we were literally just trying to help out an extended family member. He had invested in an organization that had a patent on turning liquids into sheets. So, and he spent 2 years trying to tell me that he's got the solution, And I could not understand what he was saying. I was like, do I put it in the dryer? What do I do with this sheet? So finally he sent us the product and then we used it and we realized that there might be something here. So we were heavy D2C, myself and my two co-founders. We were heavy D2C, subscription, community-based entrepreneurs. So we built a brand around it, put it into the market, and within the first 30 days got 10 times our expected result. So we literally just leaned in and leaned in and leaned in, and what we talked about is creating that movement, and it really was the change makers. So we call them true change makers. They're a customer. They're the ones that drove us to this speed that we're going at right now.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about what your primary product actually looked like. So this is laundry soap.
Yes.
But it's not a big giant bottle like we're used to. Tell us a little bit more what it looks like.
Yeah, so it is basically a 94% reduction in its weight. And we've taken what is a load of liquid laundry detergent and put it into a sheet format, literally about the size of a business card. Or alternatively, enough detergent for a family of 4 is about the size of an iPhone. So, and we went originally just mailing it to people, a subscription base, put it in the envelope. We wanted to use postal services, so we weren't driving a single truck to deliver one box. We were putting it in the person's bag who's walking up the stairs to your house every day. And that's what started the company. But now it's in 78 countries and 6,000 retail locations and continues to expand.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that you're expanding to provide more products and services. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we found that the change makers again were driving us. They're like more and more. What else do you have? Do you have something else? So we built we've only been, so for those that may not know it, we've only been around for a little over 3 years. So, and for the first 3 years, we were just laundry detergent, a bunch of other things like dryer balls and makeup wipes, et cetera, just for add-ons for our e-com. But we didn't have another sustainable, consumable product in this sheet category. And so we came out with, next was the toilet bowl cleaner. So that was, it's the second most hated chore in the household. And believe it or not, laundry is the first. So we really wanted to attack the things that people hate, making it easier for them. So instead of now having that duck where we never know how much to put in the toilet, we put way too many chemicals down into the gray water. We now just take a little sheet, you throw it in the toilet, let it dissolve, and scrape it around. Complete eradication of the plastic, complete control over the amount of chemicals that are going into our streams.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your mission-driven community.
Sure.
So one thing we hear is that some individuals, when they start to hear about the climate emergency and different disasters that are happening, they start to get climate anxiety. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how your community is addressing that.
Yeah, and there's two sides of that coin too. There's the climate anxiety that it creates, and then there's the divisiveness that climate solutions create. I was fortunate to be asked to be part of the Hub Live in New York during the Climate Week, which was part of the extension of the UN General Assembly. And especially in the United States, it's very divisive. It is very much a blue and red discussion. But what we've realized is that when you create this movement, people just want to make a change. They don't know where to make that change. They get hung up on doomsday conversations and listening to the science behind the climate, and you literally get stuck and you don't know what to do. So what we decided on Tru Earth was to not shame anybody. We went down a humor road. If you've seen any of the videos, you'll know that, you know, my co-founder Ryan is a master at just trying to find the humor behind this. But the reality is you're making a change. You're making one change in one room. And now as we continue to grow, and we're very fortunate now to have a very strong investor base and board that is allowing us to go into other products, we will not stop until we eradicate plastic from the kitchen, the laundry room, and the bathroom.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to learn a little bit more about, in addition to your sort of mission-driven community that you're building, you have some very strong corporate social responsibility values.
Yes.
And you're acting specifically on that. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. We run our organization by 2 KPIs, and they're not revenue and profits. They are the number of containers that we've saved from landfills and oceans, and the number of laundry detergent loads we've donated to those in need. I'm a big believer that corporate entities have a social responsibility to the communities by which their customers exist. And because we're 78 countries, we have a pretty big community. But when the pandemic hit, we realized that laundry detergent wasn't even hitting retail shelves. There's no way it was hitting food banks. And I'm a believer that, you know, cleanliness and especially clean clothes is a human right. So we just started donating it to local shelters. And next thing you know, it became a movement within our culture, in that now people don't, on the assembly line or the fulfillment line, they're not counting how many orders they got out that day, trying to get out 2 more orders the next day. They're counting how many containers they've saved that day, and how many loads were donated. We're super happy. We just ran our new math on all of our single use, and since inception of 2019, we've eliminated over 100 million single use plastics from ever being created. And we've donated 18 million loads of laundry detergent to those in need. Those are the driving forces of our organization. They drive our culture, they drive innovation, they drive our boardroom. They're designed to make sure, and yes, all the KPIs have to exist on the financial system. At the end of the day, you have to make money, and that's a reality. But without the social KPIs, we don't have this North Star to go after, other than the traditional thought of, well, I gotta make more money in order to sell the business.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about culture.
Sure.
We've talked a little bit about the culture of the community that we've built outside the company that you're serving.
Yeah.
But also you have the community within the company and
Yes.
recruitment. So maybe talk a little bit about recruiting team members and sort of the hierarchical structure of your company. What form you take on.
Yeah, that's when you go in hyper growth. So to put some framework, our first sale was in April of 2019, and we just finished our fiscal year at 50 million in revenue, or just under 50 million, and we're targeting to hit close to 100 million this year. the toughest thing as an entrepreneur, and I've been one since I was 18. So I started my first business when I was 18. I got 35 years, and I said this in lab to launch last week. 35 years of dragging my face through gravel. I've been through a few things. And one thing I realize, and everyone tells you, and you never really want to face it till you have to, is that sometimes the people that got you here can't get you there. So, and we realized that pretty early. We were 3 D2C people, and we knew that we were about to disrupt the undisruptible. And CPG world is especially laundry detergent, is controlled by 4 or 5 organizations around the world. So I spent a year trying to find the organizational structure that could fit. So first, what we put in was a chief operating officer who came from Keurig, Gillette, Diageo, and she is running the organization. So we are very, very clear that as COO, she runs the organization. Then we had to bring people over from Johnson & Johnson, Kimberly-Clark, Dow Chemicals. Those key people, when they came over, brought with them the compliance that we need, brought with them all of the systems that every entrepreneur, including myself, hate. All of the forms we have to fill out, the HR requirements, bans, all that crazy stuff you need as a mid-market company. But without it, we'd have been entrepreneurs that just blew up. We really wouldn't have made it. We'd have been trying to do it all, just flipping hats around as between what role we think we are that day.
Now, in addition to your motivation around corporate social responsibility, you have created a role for someone to serve in that, within the organization. Have you talked a little bit about that and how that person interacts with other members of staff?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in taking molds and smashing them on the ground. Disruption requires it. So we disrupted the normal org chart. So thank you for mentioning that, Shannon. We disrupted the normal org chart and we created a social responsibility department that reported direct to me. So there's only Liz, the COO, who reports direct to me, and Anita, who runs head of social responsibility, and her team. And we built a complete separate team. So it doesn't report to marketing, it doesn't report to ops, it never gets an opportunity to be sucked into we got to sell more, or we got to produce more, or we got to cut our costs. Having that social responsibility report in is a structure that I think every impact-based, mission-driven organization should have, so it doesn't get diluted. But then second to that, you need a board. You need a board that's going to support you. You need investors that are going to support you. We're very fortunate that we didn't need any funding up until we were about 35 or 40 million in revenue. So we were able to grow naturally, plow back profits in order to grow. But then you hit a wall. You just can't do it alone. So when we went out and sought out the right investment, that's when we could actually make real change.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because there's a real challenge to being able to grow. There's a climate emergency, and we want to act urgently. And so that's one of the challenges, is how do you sort of cut through the red tape, the regulations, all the little pieces that are these barriers to actually making impact. Maybe talk a little bit about how that capital raise allowed you to sort of move forward in that way, but what were some of the considerations that you had to take into account? Because you're basically getting in bed with other partners, and you need to make sure that they're meeting your values as well.
Yeah, the one thing I did learn definitely from the CPG folks on our team is we can't cut red tape and regulations. So that one we have to do. But as far as having an investor set and a board that understands what the impact is critical. So we're growing. We were a hockey stick. We were the quintessential perfect company for hypergrowth. And we had about 27 firms reach out to us and want to invest or acquire. And we narrowed it down to 2, and we had one option, which was a private equity firm out of New York who was going to write us a check that was, 3 times more money than my wife and I could ever spend. And then we had a suite of people led by renewal funds, and I think I just saw them on the agenda for this afternoon, led by renewal funds, but not as good an offer, but they were there with the impact. They were there with what we wanted to drive as a mission. So when they brought along the Sitka Foundation, who's also, so make sure you don't miss the 1 o'clock conversation. Pomoja Capital out of Switzerland, and of course, Export Development Canada. So EDC invested directly in us, which is not normal for a mid-market firm. So with that power of EDC, the mindset and power of Renewal, Sitka, and Pomoja, we are now in this position to be able to board ratify our CSR commitments and our ESG commitments, but at the same time, hit the numbers, right, and grow. And the exporting is what we have to do. We've already got a 1.3% market share in Canada. We have to continue to grow internationally. USA is our largest market, but Europe is needed. This climate emergency, because I'll say it that way, needs us to move faster. It needs ventures to move faster. We cannot sit back and go, okay, well, let's think about that next quarter or next quarter. So if you don't have the board or the investors that understand what moving fast is going to be like, then you've got the wrong investors and the wrong board.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, when we last spoke, you and Anita were actually in San Francisco doing a shoreline cleanup.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to talk a little bit about what motivated you to do that and how that links back to the work that Tru Earth does.
Yeah, so I'm also a believer that you got to get your hands dirty to actually make this work as an entrepreneur. So we literally went to San Francisco to clean 2 beaches during the International Shoreline Cleanup Day. And we are the U.S. Founding partner of OceanWise, and you may know OceanWise from Canada as the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, its mandate on making sure sustainable fisheries happen. We launched in the United States with them. And our first shoreline cleanup was in San Francisco. And the first beach we cleaned up was on the Pacific side. And we were fortunate that Rumor Willis, who's Bruce Willis, Demi Moore's daughter, came out and helped us, so brought some awareness with her. But we had only 8 people, and we cleaned up 465 pounds of trash from that beach. Compared, to put that in perspective, we had 30 people on English Bay about a month ago, and we got 40 pounds. So in this beach, we went to it, Shannon, and it looked clean. Like we literally we went to it the day before, and the PR firm, we have a PR firm out of New York, they came as well, and they're looking at it and they're going, this beach is, there we go, this beach is clean. Like the PR people actually brought some recycling from the hotel room just in case they had to throw it around because they knew Rumor was showing up. So and we got there, and within 20 minutes, these people were bringing pails and pails because all the dunes had caught all this plastic. And even though the beach looked clean, it was remarkable. Then 2 days later, we went to the bay side, and there we had 62 change makers came out as we did a call for action on actual International Shoreline Cleanup Day. And there we cleaned another 460 pounds. So on 2 beaches in 2 days, we cleaned 925 pounds of trash off of this small section in one city. And San Francisco is thought to be one of the cleaner, the most forward, the advanced environmental cities in the world. And it's everywhere, though. This is not an American thing. This is not a Canadian thing. This is a global thing.
Oh, thank you. No, it's really interesting. You're giving some really great examples about how you can make changes not only in your home, but take concrete action out in the community. And as an oceanographer, one of the challenges we have is that the ocean is connected globally. And so impacts that are in one part of the world then end up being transported, and the actual negative effects are being felt by other communities who may not have actually contributed as much to the problem. So having people taking steps to help support that is really, really important. Now I know that you did some other work when you were in San Francisco in terms of a maternity clinic, some of the donations that you made. So I want you to talk a little bit about that because it really has an impact on sort of human rights and social rights around hygiene and cleanliness.
Yeah, so, wow, you know everything. This is crazy. So we did a donation with a homeless prenatal program in San Francisco. So we donated $100,000 worth of laundry detergent. And that program is amazing. And I'm also a big believer that just writing a check or sending product is not enough. So our team actually went and volunteered for half a day and actually filled the bags as these homeless women came. And the program that they do, and there's many programs like it around the world, is amazing. From the transition so what we're also doing is when they're transitioning people from homelessness to a transition home, we're providing them with an entire year's worth of laundry detergent, because literally that's the size of a wine bottle box. So they can put that in the small home that they have, but it is a home. And they can have clean clothes for themselves and their children, because it is a human right. It is absolutely a human right for cleanliness. And if we can do that because of our hyper growth, because of our movement, and the movement is over 1 million people and continuing to grow, then we should do that. And every organization should do that. They will, I think, when pressure comes from the consumer. When we start pressuring and making a decisive move in a grocery store to grab Y versus X because Y is doing social good, you will see more companies moving on. Right or wrong, we believe in clean giving. We'll do it without the string. So just do it, no strings attached. Companies want strings attached. Right? Big corporations need strings attached. Their boardrooms aren't as understanding as ours may be. So if we continue to show that, if we continue to take away from these big major corporations, then hopefully that awareness will come. As some of the climate solutions and even the healthcare solutions that during Lab to Launch that I'm part of, if they continue to build that, because we all go in with this big altruistic purpose of trying to save the planet, but then we get caught. We get caught in the numbers, and we get caught in the quarterly reports that we have to do, and the decision we have to make, like between marketing and CSR, and that becomes a struggle. So you have to, as a leader, you have to have the courage.
Absolutely, and I just want to bring back that storyline about hygiene and cleanliness, and how stories about that and connections about that back to human rights are so important. So, for example, we have many examples in climate justice in which, for example, Boat Harbour, an Indigenous community in Nova Scotia, the local pulp mill put their treatment facility in their lagoon right next to the reserve. So when the kids would go to school, they would smell of hydrogen sulfide. Africville in Halifax, same thing. The landfill was situated right beside the Afro-Canadian community. So there are so many examples where there's been a climate justice action and a social justice piece, which actually relates back to cleanliness and hygiene and lack of access to that. And that has significant social costs for families and for children. Now, I want to bring things back a little bit back to EIWBC. You've been an incredibly generous mentor working in Lab to Launch, also with our social ventures in our CASE program over the last 2 summers. I want to ask you a little bit about what motivates you to give so generously of your time to our programs.
Somebody asked me this in the U.S. when I was down there. I told them the amount of hours, and they're like, well, why do you and how do you do that? And my answer, because I really never thought, I never did the math on how many hours I was putting in, is because I'm getting more out of it than the ventures are. So they don't really know that, but I'm sitting there, and it's a constant reminder. And as we grow these organizations, we get caught in not remembering the basics, especially when it comes to launching a product. And we have product after product that is coming to launch. And it just takes once a week. I have to put up a mirror and listen to my own words and see my own face. And then I get this great advice by all these other mentors, and it's all free and it's wonderful. And I'm making notes like crazy. I told Andrea too, it's actually one of the best parts of my week is being in that moment. On the other side of it is the clean giving side. I don't have any expectation from anybody. I'm not saying here's how much we put in. It is just there because we have to move faster. I cannot say that any clearer. We have to move faster. And the faster we can get some of these ventures to market, the better off we are going to be, without question.
So I'm going to encourage the audience again to put some questions into Slido. I'm going to ask Brad one more topic that I think is an important feature for many of our ventures, and then I'm going to turn it over to Michelle and Chang to moderate some of the questions coming from the audience. But we have a lot of ventures at Entrepreneurship at UBC that are science-based and engineering-based, where the motivation is around impact. But also there's a vision that the funds that are generated, the revenue that's generated, could be plowed back into the company to make more inventions. And then it becomes a bit problematic trying to envision if you've accepted investment and you need to pay back that investment, and the easiest way to do that is to have an exit, but then you sort of lost your baby. How do you sort of think about what those options are? So I'm sort of going to pose it back to you, knowing that you've now had this significant raise, although with investors that are very like-minded. What does the future look like? What are sort of the options when you're thinking about making impact in the long term for a company like Tru Earth?
Yeah, that's an hour and a half answer right there. But the reality is, the organization will create the culture to continue to move forward. We need to and are always cognizant of what the investors are expecting from a return. Because impact or not, every investor should expect a return and should keep the leadership team and the CEO accountable to the math. Innovating and creating new products needs to balance with social responsibility. So we've board ratified a number of CSR initiatives, including 12 million loads of laundry detergent, a certain percentage of our advertising to not have a buy now button, to be social driven, and a certain percentage of our revenues to be on social, and also to make sure that we are B Corp. We board ratified that, so no matter what happens to the math of the business, we have to execute those. So that keeps us focused on it. If we hit all the numbers, when it's time for an exit, or when I'm not capable of running it, say it gets to 250 or $500 million, I'm not a $250 million guy, and I'm okay with that. And then handing it over to someone that can run it so that it continues its mission. As shareholders, we have to make sure that we don't hand it over to someone that's going to bury it. That's the key, right? And that's hard. That's really hard, to give up that check and say, oh man, I started this business to get a check. 35 years I've been waiting to get that check, and I got it. Nah, it's okay. We're gonna keep going. That's a tough decision to make. Yeah.
So Jane, are there some questions from Slido?
Yes, we're going to go to slido.com and bring it on stage. And if you just glance over your shoulder, Shannon, you can direct the questions to Brad.
Oh geez, here we go.
Here we go.
So let's start with the first question, which is around greenwashing. So the question is, how do you make sure that the consumers see the difference between Tru Earth and another company that is actually essentially greenwashing their products? Yeah,
so it's a very good thing. And when I was down at Climate Week at the Hub, and it was some of the largest corporations on the planet, so understanding of, and they would look at me and go, what are you doing in this room? How'd you get in here? And I think it was actually PepsiCo that said transparency is the best disinfectant to greenwashing. So we believe 100% in putting all of our ingredients online for everyone to see. All our manufacturing processes are available to be accessed, and we pay a living wage. So all I can do is be transparent. We will not, you'll never see us bash anyone for anything they may do, and we think the consumers needs that transparency to make that decision. There's a company that started putting their sustainability facts on their packaging like they do ingredients, and we're going to work towards that once we've got our B Corp, and then literally have it a label as to how much CO2 we've saved, et cetera. Let's be transparent. Yeah. Demand transparency. Mm-hmm.
And so being a humble Canadian company and knowing your culture, how was it for you getting your B Corp certification and realizing that you had to blow your own horn a little bit more?
Yeah, well, and we're still working on our B Corp. I wish, in hindsight, that I would have done this in 2019 because it would have been a lot cheaper and easier than doing it when you're our size. But with that, we do have to elevate our confidence. One of our core values is confident but humble. We had to elevate our confidence, especially in the United States. We need to elevate our confidence. I got asked whether I was mean enough to take on the CPG firms, because they saw that I was Canadian. So are you mean enough? I don't know. Let's go find out. Push me into a corner. You'll see. My red-headed temper will come out.
So the next question we have is about what kind of advice might you have for startup founders who may be troubled with the downward pressure in company valuations?
Oh, yeah. My advice would be stay the test of time, just stay with it, stick with it. Valuations are elusive. Their valuation is only something where somebody else deems it's worth. When you've got a venture and you're push forward to the impact and the good that you're going to do, and try and put the evaluation in a box and forget about it. I've had to do that too many times. We've been evaluated all over the map, right? With our growth, you can't believe any of that stuff, and do not get frustrated when the valuations get pushed down, because eventually they'll come back around, or it'll all just normalize itself. Mm-hmm. Investment will come back.
Okay. So another question. Mm-hmm. So how would you compare the mindset of climate leaders today compared to more the digital technology leaders of our time?
Oh, whose question is that one? That's a good one. So what I am realizing, and what became evidently clear when I was in New York during the UN, is that the big giants have woken up in the last 6 months. So these are some of the, as I said, largest firms on the planet in a room working it out. Businesses were taking on businesses were taking on government were taking on businesses, and NGOs were in there in the fight, as were capital partners and what have you. So I'm thinking that the Google, it was Apple, in the room, there was Amazon, they were all in the room, and they realized in the last 6 months that this stuff's actually real. Right, their supply chain is broken. Like PepsiCo, which is Lay's, their potato farms are impacted dramatically. The floods in Pakistan, and we haven't even seen that ripple yet. So all of a sudden, and the governor of California said, you just have to believe your own eyes now. Forget about whether this is blue or red, or just believe your own eyes. So what I'm noticing is that the technology is a driver and an enabler of climate solutions. And these big firms with a whole bunch of money are really leaning in now. And it felt different. I've heard it before in the last 3 years. This one felt different. And I hope it comes to fruition. We'll lean in. We're going to continue leaning.
Very interesting. I'm going to share an anecdote that Arthur Chen from Verdi told me, which was that, so they have a smart agriculture irrigation system. And when they first went down to California to talk with one of the biggest wine growers, Gallo, they were told, we don't have a water problem. There's no water problem here. And 12 months later, second meeting, we actually have to stop irrigating our crops because we don't have enough water. So, as you said, you have to just believe your eyes to move forward. I'm just going to ask Chang, do we have time for a couple more questions?
We have time for just a few more. 2 more minutes.
Okay.
2 more minutes, all right.
Yes.
Let's go.
Okay.
I'll shorten my answers.
Mm-hmm. So, for pre-product market fit startups trying to move fast,
yes,
what is your advice for balancing spending to move quickly and an otherwise limited financial runway?
Another great question. So depending on the scale of what proof of concept is, so if it's a proof of concept, I believe heavily in working with universities and different organizations to be able to get those proof of concepts to market. We are an investor in an organization that cleans swamp water, and we've used University of Tennessee and other universities, so that's a quicker way to market. Speed to cash sometimes becomes important. So you might have to just modify your expected product to be speed to cash. So in these scenarios, good enough is just that. So, there's a saying, right? Perfect is the enemy of done. So you got to get a product, you got to have a minimum viable product, get it to market, see if people want it, get enough cash to keep the motivation going. And it's hard because we all believe it should be perfect. And especially if we're in the science background, you got to just get the market.
Okay. So last question, I'm just tying two questions together here. What was one of your most challenging failure experiences, and what did you learn from that?
Well, we'll start with the A's. A lot of failures in the set. The most challenging failure for Tru Earth, I think the most challenging, and I wouldn't call it a failure because it's still a battle. The most challenging thing is fighting the conversation of marketing versus corporate social responsibility. So we have very smart marketing people, and they continue to want to transact. And we have very smart social responsibility people who continue to want to make an impact. And that challenge is difficult. And then as far as failure, it would be, we went to market with a product that we had great high hopes and expectations for, and it fell flat. And being able to say, okay, no, pull that off. Let's go. Let's bury that thing. Let's move on to something else. So taking the ego hit and just wipe your nose and get at it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I want to thank Brad very much and for all your time today and all your help with your mentorship at EIW BC.
Thanks.